Hello, I'm the Angry Spork. When I was a kid and one of my older brothers was also collecting comics, we'd lend each other comics to read that one of us would buy but the other didn't. One of his I read several times. Something about it made me want to revisit over and over, but heck if I can remember what that was. So today I'm taking issue with Wolverine vs. Spider-Man, a collection of stories originally printed in Marvel Comics Presents number 48 through 50. Let's see if this team-up makes us want to turn the page or turn our heads. The cover has a cool enough looking dynamic. Two heroes posing for the reader with Spidey largely in shadow and Wolverine pointing to his foot for some reason.
See, this is where my foot fungus is really acting up. I would think my healing factor would have cleared it up by now, but hey, I'm no doctor.
It's a reprint of the cover to Marvel Comics Presents number 49, but they changed from black webs against a white backdrop to white webs over purple. And while the webs are fine and fitting enough for this particular cover, it doesn't look right. Maybe it's the stringiness of the webbing against this particular shade that makes it look a little unpleasant to look at. Or maybe it's the scan. It's been years since I read this after all. Writing and pencils done by Eric Larson, with additional art duties fulfilled by Josef Rubinstein and Gregory Wright, we begin with Spidey swinging high above. A blueprint of the city, it looks like. So either it's gigantic or he's been shrunk. Anyway, his inner monologue is reflecting on the preposterous coincidences in his life, like tenuous ally Tom Fireheart, aka the Puma, buying the Daily Bugle.
Pooh, a man, he flies like a moron.
Flash Thompson dating Felicia Hardy, aka Black Cat, allegedly a scheme of hers to drive a wedge between Peter and his wife Mary Jane, and fellow Daily Bugle employee Glory Grant trying to shoot Spidey but accidentally killing her boyfriend, who was a werewolf.
The most preposterous thing about that last one is that I always figured Glory as more of a Frankenstein's monster kind of gal.
But the exposition doesn't stop there. He continues musing how he, Harry Osborn, and Flash Thompson dated many of the same women, as well as the supervillain connections therein. Molten Man being related to Harry's wife Liz, Gwen Stacy having dated Flash, and Betty Brant being married to the Hobgoblin. Geez, trivia night at Buffalo Wild Wings is getting really invasive and weird these days. That's when he spots Wolverine on a rooftop, someone he thinks died saving the world. But I don't know what he's talking about. Maybe the Fall of the Mutants story, which happened sometime before this, and it involved several X-Men sacrificing themselves before being quickly revived, but Spidey doesn't mention anyone else, and there's no reference caption, so I'm at a loss. Whatever the case, Wolvie's death was televised, and Petey doesn't like someone dressing up like him to cash in on his good name. Good being subjective, not just because of the whole world hates and fears mutants thing, but depending on where you go, Logan's reputation could be considered less than sterling.
Heads up, Crumb!
Now, at first, referring to someone as a small particulate of food may seem like a strange insult, but it has some merit. That you're something to be brushed off, swept away, discarded after falling off by chance from someone's ham sandwich, and... yeah, okay, it doesn't make any sense to me either. Spidey's initial attack misses, Wolverine dodging and casually lighting up a smoke, asking, "What's all the hubbub, bub?" Pretty sure he just said that so he could have an organic excuse to say bub twice in the same sentence. The webhead thinks this could be a ghost or any kind of doppelganger with which he's had experience, and even considers that he may not have superpowers at all. After his punch misses and he takes out a chimney, Wolverine knocks him away, sending him flying, only for the spider to launch back and finally connect with a sock to his jaw, while stating the X-Man's death. That's when the claws come out, and Logan seems more than willing to continue their rooftop rumble. Parker takes a moment, notes the build and pig stickers are about right, that people have thought he was dead a time or two, and that his spider sense isn't tingling, realizing this is the real Wolverine.
I thought you were dead!
That's right, dead serious about going to Itchy and Scratchy Land!
Webbs then chastises himself for attacking first, apparently an impulsive habit he's acquired lately. Not to mention that chimney you wrecked. There's one place that won't be getting any presents from Santa this Christmas. Logan's on the trail of a kidnapped girl held in the warehouse below. The same warehouse where where Uncle Ben's killer fled, so Pete's brain is rattled further. After noting other wacky coincidences in his life, from Harry and his therapist each becoming the Green Goblin to his Aunt May almost marrying Doc Ock, he calms himself down again, insisting that this spot being familiar doesn't mean anything. After probably wondering if this is how people feel around John Dorian during a fantasy cutaway on Scrubs, Logan says that the girl is a mutant of undetermined limitations, and some evil mutants want her for their own ends, even kidnapping her dad so she'd cooperate. Both determined to put a stop to the crime, Wolverine leads the way, telling his surprised partner to keep quiet and follow his lead. They head to the warehouse roof, which looks intact from here. Then in the next panel it looks like they're either entering through a hole that was already there, or made one by crashing through it, which, despite the lack of sound effects, would make some noise. No sooner than they enter the warehouse does Spidey try to tell him something, and then a gun is put to the mutant's head.
Oops. I forgot to feed the meter. And to let the dog out. And I left my clothes in the dryer. Now they're gonna get all wrinkled.
This ends part 1.
Chief Wiggum, P.I., will return right now.
And picks up with them being shot at by sentry lasers, as Wolvie slices the gun at his head, and Spidey recaps their mission, with a dig at his wife's cooking.
No matter how bad MJ's cooking might be, if you knew about One More Day, you would not be complaining about casserole.
Also, someone put time, money, and effort to outfit a rickety old warehouse with high-tech security. Feels like they should hire an accountant. After taking the rest of the sentries out, which probably kills any remaining chance for stealth, Spidey webs a camera to the wall, beginning to explain that he has a photographer friend, but Logan doesn't care. Though internally, he makes sure to keep out of the line of fire since he's supposed to be dead. Still no context for that, but anyway, Pete's spider sense is set off, and despite a verbal warning to move, Logan's nonplussed curiosity leaves them momentarily stationary when the floor beneath them erupts. We get a look at the kidnappers, led by a guy called Critical Mass, who... yeah, emphasis on the mass. Our heroes swing away from his energy blasts, while his minions separate them. Whiplash ensnaring Spidey, while Bloodlust goes after Wolverine. While the Webhead handles his opponent fairly well, the jaundiced Claw Lady proves faster than Logan expected, getting in a good slash at his sternum.
Still don't like to hit a lady. I'll adjust. I don't find her particularly attractive, so that'll probably make it easier to punch her in the face.
Breaking free of Whiplash's tendrils, Spider-Man recognizes the lead mutant as Arnie Gunderson from his 4th grade class. After missing Bloodlust while she deals more damage, Wolvie manages to get a good slash in, which is weird. His narration boxes indicated his moves weren't working, but he doesn't seem to do anything different, so I'm not sure what the takeaway is here. Savage Finn and another more average-looking goon coax the girl to use her power on the heroes, threatening her father. She cooperates, as the next panel is devoid of almost all color.
She has the ability to reduce them to line art. She's a menace to comic colorists everywhere.
The heroes are incapacitated, ending Part 2. Part 3 sees the goons surround them, with some tweaks in the coloring. Bloodlust has a more healthy skin tone, and Savage Finn looks like he's got a scaly mustache. Kinda looks like Hulk Hogan now. The band of baddies, as their leader calls them, still intend on using the girl for more lethal means, but the unnamed gunman wants to kill Spider-Man for what he did to his brother.
Oh, come on. What's the worst that could have happened to him? Oh.
That's when our title characters spring forth and counterattack, Wolvie apparently going for no prisoners as he slashes Whiplash's face. That might need some ointment. While Spidey blinds the group's leader and frees the girl from Finboy, Logan eyes the gunman, though looking like he's halfway through a sneeze. Though he's stopped from possibly killing the guy when Arnie blasts him. "You won't stop me! I'm a bad dude!"
But are you a bad enough dude to save the president?
Also, I personally find it a little weird that the gunman was voicing belief in God, considering, everything he's involved in here. Anyway, he gets punched by Spider-Man, only for a startling revelation to unfold. He's Peter Parker's dentist! Oh, and his clothes are a lot like the ones worn by Uncle Ben's killer. Bloodlust tries to get the drop on Spidey,
only to crash right through the floor. Though not before some of his patented Spidey wisecracks. "I know a guy who'd be perfect for you. Only trouble is, he's dead. And you've been slashing away at his corpse for the last half hour."
I never figured Parker for a fan shipper, but he has officially gone too far when he starts involving necrophilia.
Before Wolvie puts Arnie through his less pleasant version of the Slim Fast diet, Savage Finn orders them to stop, albeit with a broken nose. He threatens to shoot the girl if the do-gooders don't get lost, but the young child has an alternative solution, one that alerts Peter's spider sense. Before he can make it to safety, the girl's power explodes, wrecking the warehouse and reducing at least 4 occupants to skeletal remains in the process.
Either that, or this warehouse becomes a Halloween USA each October and some decorations were left behind.
A bewildered Spidey emerges from the rubble, and we soon jump to later at his apartment, where he and Mary Jane go over the photos his camera took. Gotta say, must be a durable piece of hardware to survive all that. None of the pics show Wolverine, Arnie's face, or the dentist. No bodies were found, and he wonders if he's got some kind of head trauma from the explosion, or if he's going nuts. With so many people he's known either being enemies or related to them, even the guy that cleaned his teeth, it all feels too coincidental. Falling to his knees, he asks his wife if maybe he's causing this somehow. That being Spider-Man turns even casual acquaintances into supervillains, worries that she could be next, and is unsure of what's real.
But all that aside, honey, what did you think of my casserole?
She assures him that she's very real, and he's just overstressed. They've come too far together to quit, and she lovingly promises they'll make it through this.
Great job getting rid of this marriage 18 years later, Joe Quesada. You lackwit.
We go to an airport in Kansas, where Logan explains to the former abductees that once he heard they'd been taken, he made a few calls before tracking the man and his daughter down. Spider-Man happened to be around by chance, so he let the wall crawler spot him to join the fight. The girl, Mary, apparently teleported them to safety as she blew the warehouse to smithereens. She could be one of the most powerful mutants ever, and it'll be her dad's job to train her. They've got new identities under the surname Beck, pretty good disguises, and only Wolverine knows where they are, so they should be safe.
"We've been trying to keep a low profile ever since Daddy lost his superpowers."
They were the only thing that could protect us from the Columbia House Movie Club.
Needing to get a move on, Logan bids his friend the Captain goodbye as our story concludes.
That was Wolverine vs. Spider-Man, and it was alright. I don't know why I was reading it over and over as a kid, because not only does it seem mostly okay, there are only more subtle elements to it I would not have caught on to at the time.
Story-wise, it feels like it could have been a one-and-done issue of one of the ongoing Spider titles. Parker spontaneously teams up with another Marvel character, foils a kidnapping, superhero shenanigans ensue, nothing too earth-shattering. Maybe 2 issues. While that has the potential of being too long and ending up with a lot of filler, I do feel there were times the pacing was rushed and could have used more time to breathe, and sometimes the exposition felt a little clunky. However, this felt like a story done largely for fun, so maybe that's why. The band of baddies all seem to be pastiches in one form or another. Critical Mass of Blob, obviously. Bloodlust looks like an anemic silver banshee crossed with Sabretooth or Wildchild. Whiplash kind of feels like Omega Red with a dash of Avalanche. And Savage Finn was obviously a parody of Eric Larson's own Savage Dragon. And the kidnapping victims that actually go unnamed, they are, apparently, DC's Captain Marvel and Mary Marvel. Not entirely sure why, maybe Larson thought it'd be a fun reference, but it's really subtle. So much so that I wouldn't have caught on then, and I don't know if I would have this time, had I not been on the Marvel Wiki for research purposes. Logan calls him Captain, that he spoke to his buddy Fred, and he smiles while saying "holy moly" and mentioning that he's an orphan. Something else I found out, while all the baddies felt like they were meant to be one-and-done villains just for the story, according to the aforementioned wiki, Whiplash and Bloodlust both survived and later joined the Femme Fatales, if under different names.
Which is odd, considering that would mean only 3 members of the baddies died, yet we saw 4 skeletons. Can't even say that one was Wolverine because he was apparently teleported to safety somehow. Speaking of, did that girl not think Spider-Man was worth taking with them?
It definitely could have used reference captions for the stuff Spidey mentions going on in his life and why he thought a guy with a healing factor was dead. But more to the point, while there's fun and humor to be had here, it feels like a lot of it was saved until Part 3. It plays mostly serious for the first 2 parts, until the last installment when Parker cracks a lot more wise, and there are situations that seem intentionally farcical, like the overly dramatic moment that he realizes his dentist is a crook, and we the reader are left with the heavy implication that he's the brother of Uncle Ben's killer.
And apparently his niece is Jessica Carradine, who would date Spidey's clone Ben Reilly a few years after this. How appropriate that Marvel is now owned by the same conglomerate that also owns the song It's a Small World After All.
After all the expository connections between Spidey, his friends and family, to one supervillain or another, I was kind of waiting for something bigger in terms of a reveal or theme at work. The way he was just randomly citing all those names in Part 1, I honestly didn't know if it was the summation of an episode of Maury or the premise for a new show on the CW. But maybe it didn't need to be some grand exploration of all those details. It seems to hang a proverbial lampshade on this peculiar trend in Peter Parker's life, but since he's always been a relatable character, he has a believable reaction when even his dentist turned out to be bad. He begins spiraling, wondering if somehow he's responsible, that he's the cause, because it's all weighing down on him. Fortunately, he has his loving wife to save him, assuring that they can overcome this, and that challenges or not, things will be okay. Brief as it is, it's actually a really good moment for these two and their marriage.
Once again, great job, Quesada.
I also think there's something to be said about Arnie's portrayal. We don't get much on backstory besides him having been a schoolyard bully that apparently stole kids' lunch money, but there are more subtle hints to his personality. He can speak very properly, authoritatively, commandingly, and superior, feeling very confident when things are going his way. But when the tables turn, he yells, "Die, die, die," and "not fair," like a spoiled child. Like he never really changed except, as Pete points out, in girth. As for the art, I thought it was mostly fine, though MJ is only seen with lips so pouty as to be comical, and several coloring errors, the dentist's mustache being flesh tone, our first panel with Savage Finn makes him look like the creature from the Brown Lagoon, and odder still, how Bloodlust had yellowed skin consistently in Part 2, but that changed all of a sudden in Part 3.
All in all, it's a one-shot that I don't think was trying to be too cerebral, but definitely has some nuance for a story that could pass for your average Spider-Man adventure. It didn't quite live up to the verses in the title, so you might argue there's a wee bit of false advertising involved, but it's fine. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.